the owner and roaster at Portola Coffee Lab. We are in Costa Mesa, California at 3313 Highland Avenue off the harbor exit 405. We've been here for about 2 years now. Just to give you a little background on myself, I started as a home roaster probably 13 years ago and just did it as a hobby for no other reason than just loving coffee and loving the flavor of it, and not being able to find a really fresh product that was roasted at a level that I enjoyed. Not a big fan of dark roasted coffee, so I was always looking for something that had more nuanced flavors, more flavor complexity other than just roast. So I decided to take the art and craft of roasting on myself, and did that for many years before I decided I might be okay at this, and love coffee so much, and came from the tech industry with a science background, studied chemistry in college, so I felt like I needed the change, and it seemed like Orange County was a great setting to do so. So I opened my first shop in 2009, subleased from a small bakery in Irvine called Layer Cake, and had a very small space, very small roaster. Did my thing there for almost a couple years, and just to kind of test the brand, make sure people like my coffee. And after a couple years, it seemed like I wasn't the only one that thought my coffee was pretty good, so decided to open my full shop here, Portola Coffee Lab. So we went with the lab concept, just I guess from my science background, and also the attention of detail to brewing, which I felt like was something that we could contribute to, not only from my experience, but just from the staff that I'd hired, very like-minded, into testing and pushing the envelope and trying new things and try to really create the best cup. That's what it was all about. So we do roast in-house. I have a 18-kilo roaster. All the coffee is roasted here on site. So we have a fresh product that's really roasted to flavor. We don't put any roast levels on our bag because I'm more interested in creating the best flavor for a bean and not getting caught up on roast levels, whether it be, whoa, watch your head. So we really wanted to not confuse people with light, medium, dark, because what does that really mean? It's our job to roast the coffees to a point where we feel it tastes best, and that's what we do. But we also put that same care and attention to a properly brewed and fresh cup of coffee. So everything we brew here is brewed to order. We don't batch brew any coffee. We don't have any coffee sitting in thermal dispensers. It's really individual brewed cups per order, and that's our model. We have a lot of interesting brewing contraptions, and although it looks very cool, our intent is not to create just purely a visual theater. The intent behind all that is to create a great cup of coffee, and that's what I'm hoping people will understand when they walk in. Although it does look pretty awesome, a lot of the stuff that the devices that we use. So we have a variety of brew methods, so a customer can come in and taste the same coffee several different ways, which really highlights the fact that brewing is important. Brewing science matters. You can take a bean and roast it with 3 different devices properly, and all 3 cups will taste distinctly different. And that's just our nod to brewing science and highlighting the fact that coffee isn't coffee, and we have to pay attention to not only how we source coffee and roast it, but also how we brew it. So that's really the intent behind it. So really, Portola Coffee Lab is a place where you can come in and know that we're always pushing the envelope, we're always testing, we're always evolving, we're changing, we're experimenting, we're doing whatever it takes to make sure that the cup that you get is the best that we could produce. And we change our techniques. You know, when we discover a new method, whether it's from another coffee company, whether it's from our own in-house testing, we're not afraid to change. So we're not locked into, this is the best and this is how we're going to always do it. We really want to stay up on the latest and greatest, and evolve when necessary. That's really what's behind everything that we do here. So it's very important to us, the coffee that we source. Just like a good chef sources the best ingredients to produce the best dish, we feel as though if we're not sourcing the best coffee beans, there's no way that we could produce an amazing cup of coffee. So really it starts at the origin, at the source. And when we source our beans, we're really looking for the best that we can find. And In doing that, or to do that, we travel to many places across the globe to find the best coffee. This year I've been to Africa, been to Central America, South America, to find the beans that we source. So most of our coffees are direct trade, meaning that we go to the origin country, and we meet with the producers. We cut many different coffees while we're there, find the best, and then negotiate a fantastic price for the producer, so they're getting paid more than they would if it was purchased through an importer. And we also go to great lengths to market their coffee. We put the farmer's name on the bag if it's a single estate coffee, or we put the cooperative name on the bag. When you come into our shop, you won't see on our bag in big letters Rwanda. You'll see Kanzu. You won't see Peru. You'll see Pablo Apaza. So we're really trying to get down to the true source of the coffee, because really a country doesn't say much about a coffee, because there's many hundreds, thousands of different coffees produced in a country, and a Rwanda coffee is not a Rwanda coffee. But if I'm telling you the farmer's name or the cooperative's name, it gives you a better sense of where that coffee's from. So I'd say we're about 90%. This year will be about 90% direct trade, which is fantastic for us, considering we've only been open here in Costa Mesa for about 2 years. And in terms of the number of coffees that we source, it'll vary. You know, we've carried up to a dozen different coffees, and I think right now we're down to about 4. We're in transition. I have a lot of coffees afloat from both Africa and Central America, so we'll have probably about eight coffees coming in the next couple months. We do source seasonally, so most of the quantities that I buy are enough to get us by for 6 months. You know, so we really like to source according to the season, so the coffee is as fresh as can be. Green coffee does store for a decent amount of time, but in arid Southern California, we found that 6 months is a good time frame, so that the green bean doesn't dry out while it's being stored here locally. Orange County. What we call Japanese slow drip coffee. It's dubbed Kyoto, and I give credit to Blue Bottle for dubbing this contract the Kyoto. That particular name isn't necessarily accurate in the sense that this coffee didn't originate from the Kyoto region in Japan, but it is Japanese slow drip style coffee. These contraptions here are manufactured and imported from Japan. And the idea behind this coffee is that, just kind of talking about extraction in general, heat increases the extraction rate. So when you pour hot water over coffee grounds, it'll extract at a much quicker rate than if you pour lukewarm water or cold water. But time also plays an important factor in extraction. So even though you have cold water, if it's in contact with the coffee grounds long enough, go ahead. It'll have the same opportunity to extract as much as hot water. It just takes longer. Now the difference is you have cold water and hot water. You can end up extracting the same amount of solids from the grounds, but you have a completely different flavor profile. And that's what these guys are intended to do. Create a very unique flavor profile, and that's what they do. This is an 8 to 12 hour drip process, depending on how quick or how slow we set the drip. And what's unique about this style of coffee is it tends to produce a less acidic cup or less bright cup. The body is different, it's very sweet, and this, as opposed to this slow drip coffee, as opposed to a full immersion toddy method, which is very popular for iced coffee, is it imparts almost an alcoholic kind of taste profile, like bourbon or brandy with some of the coffees that we put through it. So it's very, very unique in that sense, and that's why we like it. But it's very rich, just super unique, delicious coffee. Siphon bar. And the siphon device was invented in Germany around somewhere in the 1850s. And like any other methods, it creates a very unique cup, and that's why we like to offer it in our shop. Now, siphon coffee is best described as a lighter bodied, more nuanced cup, I would say. So in other words, flavor clarity is increased with the siphon because body is reduced. When you talk about brewing across the spectrum of brewing devices, you have brewing devices that are known for heavy body, and you have brewing devices that are known for very high flavor clarity, meaning you can detect the unique flavors that are naturally occurring in the bean much more easily in a cup that has high flavor clarity. Siphon is on the far end of the spectrum of flavor clarity, but also completely opposite of body. So if you look at a French press would be a very high body, very low flavor clarity cup of coffee. Siphon is on a complete opposite. It's a very quick brew time, so typically we're steeping the grounds in that top chamber for 45 seconds to a minute, but at a very fine grind setting. We also use a cloth filter, which is unique amongst brew methods. It's very common in the siphon to use a cloth filter, but comparing it to other brew methods in our shop, paper and metal filter is pretty unique. So that does impart a very, also very unique flavor in our siphon cup. So basically how it operates is we'll dose the water in the bottom chamber. We have a halogen siphon bar here as opposed to open flame. The benefit of this is consistency, and it's much easier to control the heat if it's a constant wattage halogen bulb as opposed to an open flame. So we boil the water in the bottom chamber, which creates steam pressure, which then forces the water up the center tube into the top chamber. Normally when we're brewing, we'll have a cloth filter disc in that top chamber. So the water is forced up through the cloth filter and will stay up in that top chamber as long as there's heat applied to the bottom lobe, because the steam pressure is continuous as long as there's heat in the bottom. We'll then dose the coffee grounds in the top and then agitate, just to make sure that we have complete and even extraction. Once we're done brewing, depending on our method, it varies amongst different coffee companies. But once we're done brewing, we will cut the heat. The bottom chamber will cool and actually create a vacuum. So that's kind of where the device gets its name, siphon or vac pot, because it actually does create a siphon or vacuum in that bottom chamber. As it cools, the particles will contract and make room in that bottom lobe, which will actually create a vacuum and suck the brewed coffee from the top back down through the filter, through that center tube, into the bottom lobe again. So it's very, very cool to watch. Probably the neatest thing in our shop to see happen. But it also creates a wonderful cup of coffee. Not for everybody, and I'm not going to say it's the best cup of coffee because it really does matter. Personal preferences do matter. I personally like the siphon because I like to taste what's natural bean, and if you do reduce the body, like I explained earlier, it's just much easier to detect some of those really nice, whether it's fruit, floral, whatever it is in the cup. I find it much easier to pick up on those types of flavors in the siphon, so it's really unique. Theorem is our 6-seat concept coffee bar, and basically what that means, it's a very unique space. It's very hard to define because it really changes on a weekly basis. For us, it's a space for 6 customers to come in on an hourly basis and sit down and get an unbelievably unique and creative coffee experience. What happens in here is entirely up to the barista. The creative menu that they put together on a weekly basis is limited only by their skill and imagination, and we push the envelope pretty intensely in this space, whether it's barrel aging or Kyoto slow drip coffee in oak for 6 months, whether it's distilling coffee, whether it's creating cocktail-inspired coffee-based drinks, whether it's utilizing the unlimited number of brewing devices that we have available for our baristas in this space. All that together just creates an experience like nothing else. And what we want to do in here is introduce to people the idea that coffee is every bit as craft as beer, as spirits, as wine. It's every bit as complex, if not more. And it deserves a space right next to all these other craft beverages, and that's really what this space is about. It's doing things with coffee that most people have never imagined you could do with coffee, and doing it in a fun way, non-pretentious. We want it to be educational, we want it to be welcoming, we want people to interact with the barista who's running the seating, and just have fun. It's a really neat place to learn a lot about coffee and to interact with others and try things that we never thought possible with coffee. And that's really what Karen is about. And what it is in 6 months, what it will be in 6 months, I should say, we don't know. I mean, it's really, like I said, it's without having many limitations, we're just kind of seeing where it takes us, and keeping it unique and fun and creative is really our only intent. But then still staying very true to coffee. So that's there.